1-minute warning. This is for Tim Abenreiter. So it looks like we have mostly everyone here. So
if you want, have a seat. Pull a chair forward into the shade if you like. Okay.
Yeah, there's seats over here.
Yeah, and there's chairs back there that can come closer in the shade. Grab a beverage if you want, water or wine or whatever.
So for those of you that have a program, that my sister has put together, she has the welcome by me, and she only gave me a little bit of advice, reminding me that this is not all about me today. So this will be briefer than my usual welcomes. But anyway, I'm David Quasius. For those of you that don't know who I am, and I think people will be introducing themselves if they're up here. I'd like to start by saying that I feel much better about talking to you from up here than having you talking about me from up here, if you know what I mean. Eventually that's going to happen. So anyway, we're gathered here today to place Erik and my nephew Mark Quasius into our vault. So, what about this place? Not everyone has a sanctuary and not everyone has a vault. I'd like to start out by thanking some of the people that were responsible for making this possible, and then I'd like to give just a brief overview and timeline of how this came to be.
Oh, no. Oh, go on.
Oh, yeah. We already took the hook and we put it over towards the other place. So anyway, I want to start by thanking the people that really helped develop this. So one of the guys, of course, was Erik. Erik helped me with the slabs and a whole number of different projects here. And then from that point on, we have landscapers, which are my sister and Katie, who I didn't forget this time around, and my wife Kathy. They did a lot of the landscaping, the plantings, the raised gardens, except for the rocks, which had, let's see, you again, Scott and Ben and Matt were big rock movers. So they were very instrumental in making this.
I might have moved a rock or two.
Well, okay, she double dipped with rocks and plantings. I want to thank the colors who aren't here today. They provided the flagstone, because the last time we had an internment, we were sitting here and standing here in the mud. So anyway, it's turned out to be a wonderful spot. So how did this actually come to be? This is going to be very brief, of course. Let me start at the beginning.
Come on.
So actually, this idea happened about, 4 years ago in 2017. I was down in the Grand Cayman Islands, and I just finished a concrete sculpture, and I'm sitting in a bar, and what always happened down there is that someone would come up and say, "What's your next project? What's your next project?" So as kind of a lark, I said, well, I think I'm going to make my own sarcophagus. And that was fresh in my mind, because we had recently had the vampire ball for one of our big costume parties here, and I had been studying vampires and crypts and coffins, and a lot of the different props we had. So I thought, a prop out here with a vault that we can put a vampire in, and then have a skeleton in the inside that when people open it up, they'd see the stake sticking out. So that was the original idea. So in 2018, we got to work on actually laying the slab, doing the slab, and then doing the sculpture up on the top. And as that started developing, I thought, well, jeepers, I don't want to do a prop, really. Cheaper. We have Mom and Dad sitting on a shelf. Dad's been there for 20 years and Mom almost a dozen years. I said, what happens to them when we're gone? We got grandkids running around, but do they even remember or have a memory of them? So I said, well, why don't we do something a little more permanent and have a place for them? So I scratched the idea of the fun, stupid prop, and we ended up putting the Quasius on the side, and then we extended it out to whoever else might want to be in here in the future. So Cher and Erik signed up for the pre-construction, which was cheaper deal, and all of the kids. So anyway, we took it from there, and in 2019 early, we were done with this area, and we had an internment for my mom and my dad which was very meaningful. It was wonderful, a beautiful celebration, and put them in. And then after that, the following year, that was last year, we put in this flagstone area and then a couple more raised gardens just to finish this area off. And then if you have an opportunity down the walk, we also put in a dog memorial for dogs that we've had over the years from our family and friends, and it's kind of a nice spot too. I know that Tim has a couple, Foxy 1 and 2 in there, and who else is in there? Fritz is in there, I think, from you, Liz, and
Leo's dog. Crackers.
Leo Crackers is in there.
My dogs, your dogs.
Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty nice. So that's basically a short history of what we had here. The one other thing I wanted to mention that I thought was kind of interesting was the fact that when we were getting to the point where we were going to invite people out here, we were trying to figure out a name for what this would be. Now we're calling it the Sanctuary, which I think turned out to be a nice name, but we put out a little questionnaire within our extended family. We came up with a number of different names to be considered. So I don't know if any of these might be a name that you like better. Recycle bin, last leg, final lap, tight quarters, kiln dried, dust collector, dead end, happy trails, bitter end, forget me not, peaceful valley, last stop, memory lane, and my favorite, the ash pit. But we went with the Sanctuary. So the way we have this set up, I'm going to be doing a reading, or actually I'm going to give a little bit of a history. I found a nice obituary that was written about my nephew, Mark Quasius. He had spent a lot of time out here when he was a youth. My brother, Pete, worked for the Foreign Service, and he was overseas a lot. And I know that Mark would spend time with his grandmother and grandfather here at the quarry. So he had a lot of fond memories of that. When I mentioned to his wife, Beth, who was the caretaker of his ashes for the last 12 years, I suggested that maybe she'd want to have him back with his grandmother and granddad, and she said that was a wonderful gesture, and she was very happy. And as we were preparing for this, I wanted to show one thing. I was over at our cottage, and we pulled this out. In the back it says, Mark Quasius, born August 24th, 1963. And my mother put his handprints and his footprints in when he was about 10 years old. So this is about 50 years old.
Where did you find that at the cottage?
It was displayed in a prominent spot. So now what I'm going to do is just read this obituary, just so you get to know a little bit about Mark. And then we'll have a reading by my daughter, Katie Beth Quasius Bongers. So, Mark Peter Quasius. So Mark was born on August 24th, 1963, and would have been 46 on August 24th, 2009 when he passed. He was a resident of Accokeek, Maryland, and beloved husband of Bethany Arnold Quasius. And he passed away at Georgetown University Hospital after a very, very long fight with cancer. So Mark was an engineer and a planner and a builder who graduated from South Lakes High School in Reston, Virginia Tech, and then worked on in NASA in the defense industry on projects. He was particularly proud of his work on a new generation of littoral defense ships called the LCSs, and it's been a series of improvements on those ships that have helped keep America great. He was an active outdoorsman. He did a lot of hunting and fishing, skeet shooting. He loved baseball in his early years, enjoyed skiing and scuba diving, whitewater rafting, and travel. When not driving nails on his many home projects, he caught a lot of big fish and broke a lot of skeets. I think that part might have been written by my brother Pete. He was born in Durham, North Carolina, attended schools in Thailand, Burma, Pakistan, Scotch College in Melbourne, Australia, and Melbourne, Australia. He's the Mark of Peter and the late Carol Schutte, who was from Sheboygan, grandson of Leslie and Dorothy, and the late Lucille Schutte, also of Sheboygan. So he's survived by nieces and nephews, Alex and Zach and Sarah. Those are his sister Leslie's children, and then of course the rest of our Les Quasius family clan. So that's just a little. I know it's hard. So many of you don't know him. We have our own memories of him, but he's gone, but not forgotten. So I did a little outreach to Beth, as I mentioned earlier, and I asked her if she would put together just a couple little bullet points, a little something I could talk about Mark, and she sent quite a long story. She wanted to put it in a story, so she told really the story of her life with Mark from the very beginning all the way to the end. It's a little long to read the whole thing, but I do have copies of it. But I called upon my daughter Katie just to give a couple excerpts from it. So if you do a brief reading for us, Kate.
I would make a few comments.
All right, so I apparently was chosen because my middle name is Elizabeth, similar to his widow, Bethany. But it was a really wonderful, heartwarming, and at times tear-jerking memory or group of memories that Beth shared. And a few of the things that I thought were really interesting, right at the top, Beth said, Mark was a bullet points kind of man, but I'm your story person. And I thought to myself, how can I turn this story into bullet points? Because I too am a bullet point sort of person. But one of the things that jumped out at me was that she had written how Mark would make a plan. He'd create a vision in his head, whether it was career, finance, leisure, or personal relationships. He'd form that vision and he would meticulously work out every detail and every aspect of it until it was achieved. And she even wrote, he would wake up in the morning with like the clear plan ready to go. And she said, I'd wake up with a mishmash of oddities. But she said he would then deploy or execute the plan to make that vision happen. And she even wrote that he'd wake up with exact measurements and an item list needed for his current building project. And she mentions in their story and their memories together a lot about a house that they lived in Accokeek, which was a place many of us have been a few times in our life, not many, but I think in the Peter Quasius and Mark Quasius family, it was similar to their quarry. They had a body of water, they had wildlife, and they had never-ending goals to always improve. So a bigger deck, another trail, and in my few handful of times I was there, I always saw it improved from the prior time, and a lot of Beth's memories revolve around improving that and just a vision of spending time and enjoying it together there. Something else, and kind of a very specific story, and there are pictures of Mark and really great memories if you want to read the full memoir that Beth left. And there's also in the sunroom/saloon when we move back onto lunch, there's a slideshow of Erik and photos shared by Beth about Mark. So you guys can enjoy some of that and get to know both of them through their lives through that. But one of the things I wanted to share with you specifically out of this, let me get to the proper page here. So Mark had battled with cancer for about 9 years. So it was 6 years into their marriage that he was diagnosed with cancer. And Beth shared how Peter and Mark decided to research and learn everything they could and use the power of information to do everything they could to find a way to beat this cancer. And for many years, they were able to put it on its heels. But after a 9-year battle, eventually cancer won. But Beth talks greatly about her relationship with God and Mark growing that relationship in his final years, not having been as close as she was to thinking about what else is out there and greater power, but really having a lot of connection with that. But the night before, and I'm going to read parts of this and paraphrase parts, and I'll probably cry, so get ready for me to pull the Kleenex out of my pocket. But Beth wrote, the night before Mark passed, he was surrounded by friends and still holding engaging relationship or conversation with friends, despite an extremely frail voice damaged from years of radiation and weakness to his body. The day he would leave his tired body for good and enter a life beyond is a day I'll never forget. And this is Beth speaking, of course. There were many things that happened. Beth went to church, and when she came home in the morning, she found him on the floor. She assisted him back to bed and, tried to ensure, is there anything that she could do to help him? And he said, I'd like you to go get my wedding ring from the bathroom windowsill. She, through just the drama of the morning and all the things that were happening, she never had the opportunity to go and retrieve the ring. And eventually she called 911 saying, I think I need support and help in supporting Mark. She was so concerned, so she called 911, and in the final moments she is in the emergency room, and she's thinking to herself, I never retrieved the wedding ring, which was one of the final things he was asking for. She said, I never did get it for him. And when the doctors called me into the room where they were working to revive him, she laid her head on his chest and cried. And through the blur of tears, to her utter shock, there it was, Mark's wedding ring on his finger. She doesn't know how it got there. It was the only time he was alone was the few seconds that I grabbed the phone to call 911. There's no real proof or explanation as to how the ring got from the windowsill to his finger. I do, however, hold on to and cherish the thought in my heart that one dear friend suggested upon hearing the story, that it was a divine act, an angel, a messenger of God, that somehow got that ring to Mark, bringing him comfort in those final moments. Whatever the explanation, I'll always be grateful for the loving reminder in that moment of grief. I'll never regret having been the one to walk alongside Mark all those years. Beth also wrote, I'll also be grateful to God for lovingly drawing Mark into relationship with him over the last year of his life. I have no doubt that Mark is fully restored and at rest indeed in the presence of Jesus, the Master, and the Carpenter. I maybe hint on Carpenter because that also came up through other points of the story, that Mark's time here and with Leslie, who he will soon be laid to rest at. Leslie is both his sister's name and his grandfather's name. But Leslie, his grandfather, he really helped teach Mark carpentry and building, and it was a really special thing that he treasured throughout his life. And they'll probably be sharing stories and tips while they're there. And there's maybe one story you shared with me. I said, was it measure twice, cut once? And you said, oh no, there's something different. One thing I'd never heard, which I probably wouldn't repeat in this setting. So that really is a very small excerpt of Beth's words about Mark. But I'll share, I was quite young when Mark was a grown-up. I remember going to his wedding, and this picture of Mark and Beth is clear as day, because what a special event for us to travel to Washington, D.C. and go to a wedding. Yes, you can walk over there. Yep. But always the kindest, most uplifting, jovial person, and just family. When we saw him here, he was happy to be here, and we were happy to have him. And regardless of how often we got to see him, it was always heartwarming and fantastic. So my limited experience. Thank you, Lauren. Apparently that's the closing bell for me.
That's the hook.
Okay, I'm out of here. All right, carry on. So maybe
nicely
before we move on to Erik, is there anybody else with maybe a memory about Mark they may be interested to share? And then maybe we could switch gears. There are a few of you here who knew Mark.
I think we should.
Okay, we'll move on.
Okay, well, that's pretty hard to follow. What an excellent speaker you are, Katie. Yes. Well, give me a minute to compose myself and find my own notes. Mine will be a lot shorter since we all had the privilege and luxury to celebrate Erik's passing before the pandemic, and had a lovely ceremony for him at the golf course in January. But I'd again like to thank everyone for coming today, and we are here also to celebrate Erik's life and to place his ashes in the Quasius quarry vault as he had wished. He helped to build it, and he was comforted to know that this would be his final resting place, and that also, someday I would be joining him here. Well, as you know, the inurnment would have taken place last year if it had not been for the pandemic. And I think we're all blessed to have not lost a single family member to that awful virus, and it's another reason for us to celebrate today. Hold on, I need a moment. Erik's love of music was almost as great as his love for practicing architecture, and we picked a few of his favorite songs today that reflect Erik's humor, his kindness of spirit, his faith in goodness and forgiveness, and his passion and love for his work, his family, and his friends. Take the High Road by Jack Williams was the song that you heard as we arrived here today in the sanctuary. Erik lived his life by those words, and he always tried to do the right thing. He often gave strangers a hearty handshake and introduced himself as Roy Rogers, his childhood hero. So let us rejoice in our privilege of having known him and having been loved by him. And now I invite the able-bodied to assist in opening the crypt to Erik's favorite song, High, Wide, and Handsome. It fitted him to a T.
So is that a call for able-bodied young people?
Able-bodied people and
Of
the
any age?
song, which is Ben's job.
I want to be opposite you.
So we need about 4 in each.
What we're
And
going to
we're
do,
gonna go.
we're going to slide it just until the head is sitting on you. That'll give us enough
Take my
Count of three. 1, 2,
They're my three favorites.
there we go. How's that? Can we reach? I think that's open enough. Okay. Yeah, it's 850 pounds, by the way. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Looks good.
Let's live it up. Might as well, we're all dying.
Okay, so now what are you doing? Comments?
Well, we're going to wait a minute. The song for a moment. Anybody wants to take a
okay.
look inside?
So who's going to place Erik? I mean, no. Who's placing Mark?
Well, I don't know. That's up to...
You want to place Mark? Me? Okay.
moment to listen to the... Is it over? No. Oh, well, okay. So now we invite anybody to come up and say a few words about Mark or Erik before we place the ashes in the vault. If anybody would like to speak about Erik or Grandpa? You'd like to talk about Grandpa? No, come on up. Yeah. This is Bianca, Erik's granddaughter.
Well, I really loved when Grandpa Erik made the popcorn for me. It was really the best popcorn I've ever tasted. Really.
That's so nice.
That's very nice.
And I also loved the movies he picked. I especially loved the one with the dinosaur. With the big green brachiosaurus.
Yeah.
From the movie.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else?
I've got a poem I would like to share. It's been memorized and recited over the years by a number of people in the Quasius family.
Might want to introduce yourself.
I'm Scott Quasius, son of David, son of Leslie. And Leslie, my grandfather, was the one who had memorized this poem as a youth. And he would often recite it to Erik and to us, and it just serves as a reminder of him and
Love a fellow man.
the poem is Aboob and Adam by Leigh Hunt. Aboob and Adam, may his tribe increase, awoke one night from a deep dream of peace, and saw within the moonlight in his room, making it rich and like a lily in bloom, an angel writing in a book of gold. Exceeding peace had made Ben Adam bold, and to the presence in the room he said, "What writest thou?" The vision raised its head, and with a look made of all sweet accord, answered, "The names of those who love the Lord." "And is mine one?" said Aboo. "Nay, not so," replied the angel. Aboo spoke more low, but cheerily still, and said, "I pray thee then, write me as one who loves his fellow men." The angel wrote and vanished. The next night it appeared with a great awakening light, and showed the names whom love of God had blessed. And lo, but Adam's name led all the rest.
Great.
Anyone else? Oh, Carl.
She doesn't know I'm doing this.
Oh, good for you.
I'm Carl Miller. I am married to Erik's sister Edie. He was a wonderful brother-in-law, someone I like to pattern my life after. But really this is more about a story about a few years back how Edie and I bought our dream house on the corner of Lakeshore Drive and Union Avenue. And we asked him if he would be our architect for that little home. And he was just on the verge of retiring, so this was probably one of the last things he probably did from a full job. So he decided he would do it with us, and fortunately for us, as we were digging through the home, we actually found the original plans to the house in the basement, all rolled up and scruffed up. So we handed them over to Erik, and he came back to us with a plan. We talked about it for probably a couple of months. He came back to us with a plan. And then he came back to us with another plan, and another plan, and another plan. I mean, he even came back to us and said, "How many times can we lay out 1,189 square feet?" The number was about 9 or 10, to be honest with you, is what we came down to. It was about 9 or 10 times before we actually got to the point where we liked the layout, where we actually executed every last square foot we possibly could out of that little place. With our sanctuary on the first floor, and 2 bedrooms in the base, and a nice full basement bathroom and everything for our kids when they would come to visit. But of course, we knew he would not take payment for this. We knew that we offered him something. He said, "Absolutely not. You're not going to pay me anything. This is the family discount kind of thing," right? But ultimately, I remembered at one of our family get-togethers, I think it was at Christmas, he said, your oldest son, he works for Century Insurance, right? And I said, "Yeah, he does." He goes, "I would really like to golf on that golf course someday." And I said, "Yeah, you probably would," you know. So knowing he wouldn't take payment, I called up my son and I said, "Hey, get us a gift certificate. We'll put it on a card and we'll give it to him." Well, we came to that day where we were standing in our living room on Geely Avenue, and I said, "Here, we got something for you for taking care of all the architecture work and everything else." And he goes, "Absolutely not. I cannot take a thing." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Open the envelope, look at it, and then tell me. If you don't want it, I'll take it back." Well, he opens up the envelope, he opens up the card, he sees the gift certificate, and he goes, ooh, this I will take." I said, "Okay." And I said, "So we'll set up a time." Now, because my son's family or he works at Century Insurance, he cannot golf on the weekend, so it had to be during the week. So we set up a time on a Thursday, and I picked him up about 6:30, I think, or 7 o'clock in the morning to make it up to Stevens Point. And about halfway up, we'd have to pick up my youngest son in Oshkosh. So on our way to Oshkosh, about, before we even got to Plymouth, he was asking me, well, are your sons really good golfers? And I said, nah, they're okay. I mean, yeah. He goes, well, then we started discussing something else. Then he came back to that subject again and said, well, really, are your sons really good golfers? I said, so what are you worried about? He goes, well, I don't want to really embarrass myself. I said, Erik, you've golfed with me. You're not going to embarrass yourself with my sons. If anything, I might embarrass you or myself in front of them. So ultimately we got up there. He was able to get into the clubhouse, buy a few things that he wanted, pay for his round of golf. He had a wonderful time. He was always, even when other times when we'd get together and my sons would be there, he didn't know my sons from Adam, but we introduced them, and he made a point to have a conversation with my guys, which really stuck home here, that he was always, making time to talk to people, and whether he knew them or not, and he really wanted to know what my boys were up to, where they worked, what they did for hobbies, all those things. So he's just a wonderful guy, and I hope I can, emulate him in some way, shape, or form. So thank you.
Oh, that's nice, girl. Thank you.
All right. I'm not going to go to the lectern. I'm just going to talk right from here.
Well, we can't hear you.
Oh,
Come on, Leo.
Oh. I don't have much to say.
It's a long walk back then.
It's a long Well, the golf thing, by the way, I'm a good friend of Erik and the Quasius family in general. I hope I'm a good friend. And
50 years.
And 60 years worth of friendship. And so for those of you that don't know, I taught Sherry when she was in 7th grade. She's now collecting Social Security, which makes me kind of feel old. Golfing, Erik and I found, among other things, a commonality in golf. We were both not very good, but we loved the game a lot, and we taught each other how to handle not being quite so good as we wanted to be. Also, interestingly enough, I've been to the Metropolitan Opera with Erik. I've been to Grant's Tomb with Erik. I've ridden the subway with Erik. We've looked in strange sex shops in New York City together. We've done a lot together. Among other things that I really enjoyed doing with Erik was building projects here, especially the party projects. He and I spent many, many happy hours doing that. And I miss him. I wish you were here.
He is here.
Yes, he's here.
I think that's him on the phone.
Tim?
Sure. I didn't plan on saying anything, but I don't have anything prepared. But I thought it's sort of honoring Erik to remember, like we're doing, all the cool things that he was and some of the cool things he did. And maybe some of these are going to be surprising to some of us who don't know him. Like, Erik was a member of our croquet group. This is some 8 or 10 very highly skilled athletes in their prime of life and trained well. Dave doesn't feel capable of joining. He's often been asked, but we would meet every Tuesday night. And besides all the beer drinking and lie telling, we'd play a little croquet. And here's the part you don't know. That's when Erik and I could smoke some cigarettes while Diane and Cher were off doing their own thing. And she never knew.
You never even smelled it on him.
That's because we have our special gum.
I don't know.
Something Cher does lots of this. Cher knows. Erik was a pretty cautious driver. So when we were traveling together in rented cars, generally Erik was the guy doing the driving. Probably our best trip was when we went to Cuba, while it was still possible to do that. And Cuba has no street signs at all, no highway signs, nothing. They don't need them because
No GPS either.
yes, there's no GPS, there's no cell phones. So we kind of got lost a lot. And the first day, the first hour we had our car, we were going out into the countryside on their one super highway. And all of a sudden, this little cop in his light blue uniform steps out on the highway and says, "Halt." So of course, both the girls say, "Damn it, Erik! Are you going too fast? Are we going to get arrested? Are we going to rot away the rest of our life in a Cuban jail?" And actually, cool it. How am I supposed to know if I'm going fast? There are no signs. So he slowed down, and we pulled over, and the cop didn't ask us to get out of the car or anything, and he respectfully said, "There are some people here who are going to the next town. Would you be willing to give them a ride?" Well, sure. And that turned out to be the best part of our trip because Juan, or whatever his name was, I forgot. Jose worked on a coffee plantation, so he took us to the tobacco plantation. He took us there, and we traded baseballs for cigars, and he put us in touch with his sister, who got us on horsebacks, and just because Erik was speeding, I take it back. On that same trip, he almost got us killed, and we almost did go to jail.
Night. Yeah.
On the very last night.
He'd be speaking excellent Spanish right now.
But, join in the chorus. Let's just rip off some of the things about Erik. He was really thoughtful. When he would do a project, he would, as somebody said earlier about Mark, plan it thoroughly and then meticulously execute it. If you go to Erik's house, you can see lots of examples of that, where this fascia was dead rotted. It was just all and now it's meticulously replaced. You can't tell. That huge 200-pound front door he built or rebuilt himself. The gorgeous bathroom, that was not just woodworking, his specialty, but that was some plumbing and some tile work, and he was a great craftsman. He loved music, especially Jack Williams. Kick in here. What else should we bring up?
We love babies.
Babies?
We love
Oh
babies.
my God, he's a baby whisperer.
Oh,
Yes.
any baby in the
Nobody
room, it
would
was on
hold a
his
baby
lap.
better than Erik.
Huh.
Love babies.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah.
He was always willing to help.
Oh, for sure.
Come over and give advice. He was like, "Erik, do you have time to come and look at this and give us some ideas?" Always. Always.
I gotta imagine he died with 160 people owing him favors. Right? Oh, I'm looking at Carl. Carl used to live on the shore of Lake Winnebago. Or do you still?
Yeah, no, I sold.
Okay. So, about 80 years ago, Sharon, Diane, and I took the boat onto Winnebago. As soon as we launched, we said, "Hey, I think we're right near Carl's house. So let's go down there and check that out first." He's on, if you're looking at the lake, he's on the east shore of the lake. And the wind was coming really heavy from the west, and it's a shallow lake, so there were waves like about this high. And as we get close to Carl's house, "Hey, Carl, you there?" We're going up and down and up and down in this boat, and the girls are going crazy. And then there's this, and we start going in circles because the steering on our inboard has been smashed on a rock. And all the boat can do is go in circles. I don't want to know how we got back home.
Tell us.
Erik took the ski rope, that yellow floating rope, and tied it around the motor back here. And he crawled back in the back seat. And while I ran the motor up in the captain's seat, he steered the thing with this yellow rope to keep us going on a beeline finally back to the dock. What can you think of, Carl? What else? Yeah, you guys did a lot of stuff.
Thank you, Dad.
Do we want to do the placement now?
Yes, I think we should do the placement.
Okay.
We have one thing from Carl.
Oh.
We were wondering if maybe we should crack the bottle before it's placed in.
Oh, and pass it around?
I thought in honor of Les, and I know Erik had a
How
few
about if we
of
put
those
it right on the end there and everybody can
Sure.
help themselves? Let's do that. Okay. Everybody.
Anybody who's interested.
That's right.
So while the early times is going around, I've got one little story to share too. Erik was, of course, part of when Mom and Dad were entombed, and he told the story about my dad. Erik and Cher lived with my mom and dad at the Sheboygan house when they first came back, and my dad was recently retired, and my dad would be sitting in the window waiting for Erik to come back from work, and he'd have a cribbage board there, and as Erik would walk in the door, my dad would be going, "Coo, coo, coo, the pigeon is coming." So that's the story that Erik told, which is pretty meaningful. So as a memory, when we're here, we burn incense whenever we come out and sit, and this is a new gathering spot for the family. We'll light an incense and we'll put it in a cribbage board in memory of my dad and Erik. So this is completely filled. 360 times we've sat in the incense for the two of them. So we're going to place this in the crib between the two of them, let them play cribbage. And now if you do one thing for me, would everyone would close their eyes, please? I'm looking around. Close your eyes. And would you just say, along with me, "Coo, coo, coo, Erik's coming. Erik's coming home."
That's sweet.
So should we...
Let's see. What's the music? Is it Happy Trails?
Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain.
Oh, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You want me to...
Sure, you can do Mark.
bumpy trail.
This is Roy Rogers and the Sons of the Pioneers.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you.
To Les, Eric, and Mark. And Dorothy.
Who cares about the clouds if we're together? Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather.
Thank you, Carl.
Nice touch.
Now we're going to close.
Now we're going to close.
So, if you
able-bodied,
come back, we're going to close the crypt. Actually, anyone wants to take a look?
Like to take a peek inside.
Oh yes, of course.
Ben, you might want to take a peek.
Yeah, I did.
Come in. Yeah. Oh, you did?
I did.
Who cares about the clouds if we're together? Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather.
This is much better than us spelled in with a wooden stake. Okay? Okay.
Mine slide dry.
Okay. Careful with your fingers.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, one more. As I look for.
We need to go your way.
This way a little bit. Okay.
And towards the feet.
Yep. And another interesting.
There you go. How are we on both ends? Pretty equal. Maybe a half inch.
We need to go
long.
just on this end here.
Which way?
There you go.
Eric would never rest in peace if that was over.
Yeah, it's got to be plumb. Plumb and square.
Same margins all the way around.
It's getting heavier with only 3 people. Okay, so then you're going to invite people to label and square candles.
Yes.
It's just a little silly coin.
We've nearly concluded our celebration. It's been our tradition to.
We seal that later on. Oh, I'm sorry. Sure.
It's our tradition usually to light a candle or some incense in their memory. We put candles all the way around, and those of us who are staying here come out after dusk, and it will be aglow with the love of everybody who came today.
Wow.
So feel free to light a candle if you wish, have a beverage, and enjoy the fellowships of each other. And we'll meet you back at the kilns for lunch. Feel free to take a little meander through here to the dog vault or through the grounds, and we'll meet you back shortly.
Or the Hall of Faces up the hill.
Oh, well, that's true. It's kind of,
I'm about to light a candle so I can get
Oh,
kitchen. You want a candle?
they're all on the table over here. Oh, also for some of you, if it's not too macabre for some people, there's a vessel of Erik's ashes. If somebody likes to take a memento or like a small bag of ashes as a keepsake. I know I keep some in a little vial for my parents, and so feel free to take some. There's a little spoon and little bags there if you want to take something home with you. So, okay, I think that concludes things, except for you're the one. This is the song Erik sang to me all the time.
One cold honey, I'm through with the show, but I ain't going nowhere if you can't go. 'Cause I'm betting my life, my sanity too. The whole ball of wax and the whole 9 yards on me.
You're the one.
I'm gonna risk the phone.
No, you are.
Cause we raised the stakes from a one-night stand. You're the one. You hung the
There goes the hot plate right
Yeah.
Well, because it was so many different things.
there. 2 years ago, when we did this with my mom and dad, we came the next day, and my bottom line pieces.
We called it, and we were totally wrong. But it was
Well, buddy,
at first I was like, I don't know what to do.
That is the new patio that we did this year. We did a lot of that. Sorry, big year this year. Thank you.
version of life in my head. I should have said something that day too.
I want to put the Zito in.
Send a twist to my way. Let the lightning strike.
Yeah. I got 2 years ago. I had 1 year before. Be better, but hey, you know, I'm